right. All right, so welcome everybody. We've got a number of people that are still joining. I'll just go ahead and start and hopefully not get too far ahead of everybody joining. As I stated in the chat, my name is Monty Chrisman. For those of you that don't know me, I'm the Associate Director of IT, and it was requested that there be some professional development sessions on Google Drive, Google Docs, and Google Sheets, mainly geared towards collaborating within your department or within the college. So that's the goal of today, is to try and get a better look, or maybe an introductory look at Google Drive, specifically Google Docs and Google Sheets, with emphasis on collaborating with others. So let me share my screen real quick and we will get started. All right, so first thing, Google Drive, for those of you that haven't used Google Drive or aren't too familiar or haven't used it at all, Google Drive is a cloud-based document storage and management, similar to like a shared folders, or if you've used other similar products, OneDrive or Dropbox or any of those products like that. To get to Google Drive from any Google page, whether it be Google Search or Gmail or wherever, you've got these dots up in the top right corner to open up the Google Apps. And this will list all of the available applications. So we go to Google Drive and it will open up our Google Drive folder or drive. So some of the benefits of Google Drive is, since at the college we use Google for our email, the other Google products, including Drive, all get bundled in. And it's easy to use the other products since we're already using Gmail. Another benefit is with the education suite, is what they call it. We've actually got unlimited space on our accounts. So it will show you down here how much you've used. However, it's really just informational. On a personal account, I think it's limited to 15 gigs, but for the educational accounts, we do have unlimited, at least for now. I don't know if that will ever change. I can't imagine them changing that and taking that away, but you never know. Another benefit is being cloud-based, and this would be similar to any of the cloud-based document storage and management products, is it's easy to move from device to device and dragging your documents along with you. So whether you're looking at it on a phone or an iPad or a tablet, laptop, your office PC, whatever, you've got access to the same documents within that drive. Sorry, I got distracted with Amanda's chat. So within Google Drive, it first will start you off at the My Drive. You can think of this, if you're used to working on campus, this would be similar to your N Drive. It's storage available out there. It's getting backed up, but it's more your personal space. And you can create folders, have folder structure in here, and I'll get more into this in a moment. I do want to touch on some of the other areas in here. Most of these I'm not going to touch on. Trash, starred, recent. A lot of those are self-explanatory or not as useful, I guess, as some of these others. My drive, that's going to be your document storage. Shared with me is going to be the files that somebody else has shared with you. And I'll get into how to share files and folders. That'll be, like I said, collaboration is a main focus of what we're talking about today. So we definitely will get into that. And then a new-ish feature is shared drives. And shared drives, you can think of these as the S drive on your computer. So it's more geared towards either a project or a department. So you can see the different drives that we've created in our department. And we've got one for the entire IT department, but then we've got all of these others that they're more breakouts, and we've got less people in each of these, and it's just limited to people that are needing access to that specific area. I think when we first turned it on, probably within half an hour of turning it on, I already saw some people. Actually, Amanda, I think you were one of the first ones that created a shared drive out there. And people have found it on their own. We have sort of tried to promote it. We haven't had many sessions like this, so there hasn't been a lot of opportunity to promote it. So hopefully this is one of the things you can take away and create within your department a shared drive that hopefully will be useful. And then within it, you've just got, same as your drive, you've got folders and the files out here. So to add documents to, oh, and before I get too far in, I know Amanda said if you have questions, throw it in the chat. Please don't feel bad about stopping us. I do want this to be an interactive. So if you do have questions or you want me to go into more detail on something, just throw it in chat and let us know. All right, so getting documents into Google Drive. Oh, we've got a question already. Should we limit shared drives to people within college email accounts? To be honest, I don't know if it will let you share outside. I haven't tried. I know you can share documents with people outside, but I've never tried with a shared drive. That's a really good question. Let's see. Oh, yes, so it looks like we can. It really is, it's going to depend on the type of documents that you've got in that folder. Obviously, you wouldn't want to share anything that's going to be a FERPA violation, so no personal student information. So yes, it's available. Use some discretion when you're looking at what type of files are out there that you're sharing. Did that? Yes, that would work perfectly. So sharing a course outline with incoming adjuncts, things like that, that is an excellent use of drives. All right, so to get documents into Google Drive, whether it be shared drives or in My Drives, there's several different ways that we can get files in. Obviously, the giant button in the top left corner titled New. This will let you create new folders or upload files and folders. You can also drag and drop. If you drag a document onto this window in this quick access area or this area here, it will upload the document there. That's generally how I get most of my documents into Google Drive. I'm a big fan of dragging and dropping. However, you can use the file upload here, or you can upload an entire folder, and it will create the folder and then upload each file into it. Creating a new folder is just as simple as give it in the name, and I put the underscore there so it just puts it at the very top, if you're curious why I did that. Yeah, so we can drop files here or use the new button. And then creating new documents is the other method. And here, these are going to be the Google specific. If you're creating a new, either Google Docs, Google Sheets, slides, forms, etc. I've never really gotten much into these others. I think I've used slides probably twice ever. Forms a handful of times, and I'll actually get into that a little bit more. The majority of it is Docs and Sheets, however. So there's a comment, if I put an Excel doc, it seems to usually upload it as Excel. And if I want it to be a Google Sheets, I have to resave it. Is there a way around that? So there used to be, and to be honest, I haven't tried it in a while. I'm not sure where it would be. There used to be a setting that, yeah, here it is, where it will automatically convert files, uploaded files, to Google Doc files. So if you have an Excel and you pretty well always want to convert that into a Google spreadsheet whenever you upload it, you can check this, and then any new Excel document that you send up will get converted over. It's been a while since I've used it, and I've actually got mine turned off now because sometimes I use Google Drive to transfer a document, so I don't intend for it to stay in Google Drive. So I might not want it to convert those documents. But I have toggled that back and forth, not in a while, but in the past I have. Great question. All right, so sharing files and folders. And I'll create some documents in a moment, but I wanted to go over how to share from this screen without doing it from within a document. As with anything with computers, there's going to be a million different ways of accomplishing the same goals. Even adding new documents. You saw there was half a dozen ways of getting the documents into Google Drive, and I really only spoke about 3 or 4 of them. So there's a lot of different ways to accomplish the same thing. So here we've got this test folder. If I want to share this entire folder with somebody, I can select it, I can right-click and go into the sharing here, or I can just select it and then choose share up here. It will open up the sharing window. From here I can, and you saw me look at this a little earlier when we were playing around with Drive, when I was trying to determine if we could share with outside. So I am going to use you guys as guinea pigs. So you can, and I just grabbed the last 3 people that said something, so that's what you get for talking. So you put in the user, and then you select what type of access you want them to have. With a folder, it's going to work a little bit different than a document. As an editor, it allows them to add, edit, or remove files from that folder. A viewer lets them open the documents, but they can't actually make any changes unless you specifically give them access to do so with that document. And I'll get into that in just a moment as well. By default, it will notify whoever you add in. It will send them an email to let them know that you have shared this folder or file or whatever you're sharing. It will let them know, and you can send a message. So there we go. And I won't actually send it, but you can also select more of a global access. By default, it's restricted to anyone that you've specifically named to have access to that either folder or file. I've never actually set a global permission to a folder. I guess it would be the same as a file, but anyway, you can select how you want, and you can say anybody within CCCC EDU. You can change it back to restricted if you want, or anyone with a link. Obviously, you want to be careful with this. This is the same discussion that we had a moment ago with the shared drives. If it's going to have sensitive information, you really need to pay attention to who you've shared that to outside, especially with the global. This would mean, if you set this, it would mean that anybody anywhere in the world could get into this folder if they had a link to it. How they would get the link, that would vary, but it's still an unnecessary risk depending on what type of information you've got in there. Now, there may be a scenario where you had a folder that you did want to share with other people. And I've used, I haven't used this one, but I've used restricted and then shared with other colleges. If I've got things that I want to share with them that maybe it's too large to send through email, or email gets really fussy about certain types of files, executables, since everybody's really worried about viruses and whatnot. Email tends to block a lot of those types of files. So if I want to share those type of files with other colleges, I throw it into a folder. I think I've got one somewhere here. So here was the folder I shared with Coastal Carolina Community College. And it was, I've got a folder out there, I've shared it with them, and I just go in and drop new files in and then send them an email letting them know. So it's very useful. So that was a folder. You can do files the same way. So you can add people, and then again, you've got viewer, commenter, editor. To be honest, with a folder, I'm not sure what commenter would do. I guess probably, I've never set a folder access to Commenter. It would have to be something I would play around with. As you can see, there's plenty of areas that I don't know the answer to. As much as I use Google Drive, and I use Google Drive a lot, there's still areas that are new to me or that I've just never experimented with. With a file, it's going to be editor is going to let them edit that file, viewer just lets them view it, and commenter, they can put comments in certain areas. Like if it's a Google Doc, they can add a comment to a block of text or go into the chat and leave a message that way. And we'll go into one of those. So that's changing the sharing permissions from here. Now, if we go into, I'll use this test folder again, and I'll create a new Google Doc. So usually the first thing you want to do once you create a Google Doc is give it a name. You can leave it with the default name. If you leave it untitled, I think will try and pick up the first sentence and use that as the title. Obviously, your first sentence is probably going to be pretty long, so it's not going to make a great title. Oops. So you can see up in the top right corner here, we've got share. And it's going to give you the same menu that we saw out there, but it's going to be just this one specific document. But otherwise, the sharing mechanism works the same. And I'm sorry, Stormy, you're my guinea pig for this session. So everything's the same as what we saw earlier. And I'm actually going to send that one. All right. And Stormy, if you want to help me out and go ahead and open it up, perfect. So one of the things I wanted to show, so I set Stormy up as an editor. So as you can see, she's already added a note, and one of the things I wanted to show was up here in this window here. That's me typing, really. Except I wouldn't have misspelled my name, I don't think. Up in the top right corner, it will show you who all has that document open. If it's a grayed out headshot or icon, it means that they're idle or they're no longer looking at that screen, but they still have it open somewhere. Maybe they've switched off to another application, or they've locked their computer and gone to lunch. Who knows? And then once they've closed that document, that bubble will go away. So you can also see where somebody has selected. In Google Docs, it's not as clear sometimes, or it's not as easily defined as sometimes it is with Google Sheets, the equivalent of Excel. And as you can see, she's selected that. So it can kind of give you a good idea of who's viewing a document at once. It can get a little bit tricky to have a lot of people as editors of a document, but there are times when that might be something you want to do. The example I usually give when I talk about sharing these documents is, I think it was several years ago. It was one of the December professional development days, celebrations, whatever you want to call it, and there were I think it was HR, was getting ready for the 5-year, 10-year, 15-year certificates and acknowledgments. And they wanted to make sure that they had the number of years correct and the titles correct. So they were opening up a document to let everyone kind of spot check on theirs to let them know if they needed to take a look at anything. So they made it editable by the entire college. And they had everybody go in, and I think at any given time, and this was a Google Sheet, and at any given time there were probably 30 people in there potentially making changes or at least viewing it. That's probably the largest example that I've seen of actual editors within a document. As I had mentioned before, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Also up here in the top right-hand corner, it will show what type of access you're currently looking at. So I'm set up as an editor right now. However, I can switch over to suggesting or viewing. Viewing will make it so that I can't make changes. And as you can see, everything's just about gone away. Suggesting, I can make suggestions, but it won't actually anyway, we won't actually make that suggestion. It won't actually make the change, and then somebody with editing access could go in and view those suggestions and make those changes if it needs to be made. Shrink my screen down a little bit again. Trying to keep an eye on chat at the same time. All right. So another piece of the sharing and collaboration, and this is actually something I don't know if it's new or how new it is, if it is, or maybe it's just something I had never paid attention to. But when I was preparing for this presentation, I ended up getting curious about this icon up here, and it's the activity dashboard. And for those of you that use Google Docs as much as I do, it might be something that you've never seen as well. But it will let you get kind of a dashboard high-level overview or a very detailed overview of who's been accessing it and who it's shared with and all of the sharing. So here we had one viewer, and it's going to update as it goes. Obviously, this document is about 10 minutes old, so there's not a lot of dashboard data. So you can look through here. You can see add or deletes. So I added Stormy, and she can edit. You can also come in here and change the privacy settings. Again, as this is fairly new to me, I've never changed these settings. So the question is, does everyone in the group have the activity dashboard or just the originator? I'm fairly certain anyone with editor access is able to see the dashboard. If you don't have edit access, okay, so Stormy can see it. If you don't have edit access, and I have tested this, then you won't be able to see the activity dashboard. Great question. And similar to that, along that same theme, is the version history. And this will be very useful, especially for a document that is out there with a lot of editors and a document that's going to have a long lifespan. So you can come in here and not a lot has happened, so there's not much for different versions. But Google will keep track of all of the changes. So we've got the original, which is a blank document, and then we've got changes made, and it will show who's made changes. And it will, as you can see, Stormy is the one that made these changes over here. So it will specify the person as well as when that change was made. Now with this, and I'm going to go ahead and make another one just so we get a little bit more data. You can force a version by naming. And a named version really just makes it easier to find when you're looking through the history. Okay, well, I was hoping it would give me another session. I don't know. It probably, I'll make a copy. I don't want to do that. You can roll back to these versions if you want. So this is the current version, so we can't roll back to there. Yes, it does show text that is deleted in the history. It can get a little bit difficult to read that. Usually I've had to go and look at a previous version to see maybe what has been removed. Most of the documents that I use are the sheets, so it's a lot easier to distinguish cell to cell, whereas a Google Doc is really open text. But I imagine it's going to be the same. But yes, it will show deletes. I think it will show comments as well, and edits, adds. So you can roll it back to a certain version. Maybe any editor revert the current version to a past version. So by default, yes, you can go in and change. Ooh, now we are pushing it. Give me just a moment. I don't remember where that is now. Here it is. Okay. No, that's a different setting. And I do mean to go back into there as well. I want to say you can change who can make reversions, but I can't remember. That's a good question. I will follow back up with you on that. Let me take a note real quick. All right. So I'll find out and I'll let you know. Oh yeah, great question. Keep throwing questions at me. I don't mind, and especially when it stumps me. It just means that I get to learn something as well. So I did touch on this area here. So when you're in this sharing window, there's a settings area, and I meant to come into here and show. These are going to be some additional permissions. So editors can change permission and share. This will allow, and it's turned on by default. As you can see, I haven't changed either of those, so both of these are on by default. Editors can change permission and share. So if you want somebody with editing permissions to be able to extend those permissions out to somebody else and add additional people in, then you can leave that checked. If you don't want them to, if you want to be the only person that can share the document and grant privileges, then you want to uncheck this. And then viewers and commenters can see the option to download, print, and copy. This will lock it. So if I uncheck this, anyone that doesn't have editor rights can't make a copy of either the entire document or even selected items within. So if I uncheck that and somebody only has view or commenter access, they can't even select a paragraph and copy it to paste it somewhere else. Google will stop it from allowing that. Most of my documents, I've never found a need to restrict it down to that level. I have seen some documents out there where somebody is, I don't know if they're greedy or about their data or protecting it from getting out, or I don't know. For whatever reason, I have seen documents that have been locked down so that nobody can download, copy, or print. You might end up finding a reason to use that feature, though. All right, so some of the other features within Google Docs is, and I showed you the suggestion, version history. I've got my cheat sheet here I'm trying to go through. One of the really cool features is, well, and as you can see over here, it will try and give you some, usually it does it with headers, some shortcuts so you can jump to different points. Obviously, this is a one-page document, so there's not a lot of jumping around, but if you've got a very long document, it can make it very easy to jump around, especially if you use the headers. You can also have a more, and I'm going to make this one a header as well. You can have a more traditional table of contents as well. Sure, we'll do it with page numbers. So it will generate based on these headers, and so you'll see it as a subset. And then if you want to update the table of contents, as you saw, you select the table of contents and there's a update button here. And it will go back through and look at your document and generate that table of contents. I've actually got some documents out there that I've used this on. So here's one of the documents that I've had it generate a table of contents for me. So it's very handy for a long document. So this is a 40-page document, and it's got 4 pages of just the table of contents. But it allows me to quickly jump to these different areas. So. All right, and the last area of the Google Docs that I wanted to look at, and I added this in, it was kind of a neat feature. I don't know how often somebody will use it, but there is a translate document. Now, keep in mind, this is going to be, it's referred to as machine translation, which means this is not done by a person, and chances are whoever reads it, they will get a good laugh over the horrible translation that happens. At least that's the way it is anytime I've seen a document that's been translated from another language into English. It's better than it used to be, but it's still a little bit laughable. Anyway, this will translate the entire document. So you tell it what you want the new document name to be, and then you give it a language that you want to translate it into. So let's do Greek. So translate, and it will go and translate a document for us. I don't know if anyone in here reads Greek, but there we go. Again, that's probably going to be a less used feature, but I thought it was kind of neat, so I wanted to point that out. Before I move on to Google Sheets, I did want to point out, if you notice I mentioned if the bubble was grayed out, it means the person has moved away from that document, or at least that window. So you can see it's grayed out a little bit here. So Stormy has moved away from this document and is now probably, hopefully, paying attention to my presentation, or she's doing some other work. All right. So now I want to get into, I'm going to make a new document here. So Google Sheets. This is where I live, in Google Sheets. The sharing is going to be very similar. Actually, it's going to be the same. Oh, yes, I have to name it before that. Same screen as what we saw before. Same additional sharing or advanced sharing. Everything we saw from before. Global permissions and specific permissions. And again, the bubbles up in the corner are going to be the same. The activity dashboard, now I haven't shared this or done anything with it, so the dashboard is fairly dull. I am going to switch over to this sharing test. I think this is one that I've used in some of my previous presentations. Yeah. So it's always only been just me, but so I created the document back in November, and then you can see, November 2019, and then you can see anytime I've come into this document to play around and show people sharing. So a lot of the collaboration features are going to be very similar to what we saw in Google Docs. Okay, I forgot I had this open in another window. So you can see the outline here. That is actually one of my other users, and I'm going to tab out real quick so you can see it move. I'm actually in here 3 times, once on my phone, once on another browser, and then once on this session. So, and it's not going to show it because it's at the very top. Now, if I was to start to edit one of these cells, you'll see it gray out. That lets you know that somebody is making changes to that cell. And I have lost my Collaborate window. Give me just a moment. All right. So that's a way that you can tell what cell somebody is editing. Again, it's going to give you the version history. Oh, right. I switched over to my test document. So you can see the different versions. One is blank, making changes. I deleted the change, and that's where, Marcy, you asked about deleting what it would show. And the Google Doc, I don't think it's all going to be within that same version, so it wouldn't really show me. But this one is old enough. Those changes were, months apart, so you'd be able to see that. So, and this was my testing the other day. So, and then if we wanted to, we could roll back and restore a version or make a copy so it will create a new document from that version. So maybe you want to compare them side by side and you don't want to roll back to the version, but you do want to see what it looked like at that time. We've had documents in the IT department where we might have a header and somebody has sorted it but forgotten to keep those headers where they're supposed to be, and now they get all mixed in. So we put on our detective hats and start trying to figure out what happened and where the data went and who gets picked on. That's how we do things. We have a lot of fun down in our department, at each other's expense, I'm sure. All right, so another feature with the Google Sheets is locking down. So you might open it up and allow edit access for everybody. However, there may be specific areas within the document that you don't want people to make changes to. So, and you can lock an entire sheet, and it's going to be called Protect Sheet, or you can protect an individual cell. Also, with protecting a sheet, you can protect a sheet except for specific cells. So maybe you want the entire sheet locked down, and you don't have to give it a description. You can if you want. If you have a lot of protections in your Google Sheet, you may want those so that you can have an idea of what is getting locked or what the purpose of that lock is for. I think I've got certain cells. Yeah, I've got cells already locked, and it's letting me know, hey, are you sure you want to make these changes? And this is what we saw earlier. There's two different types of warning or locks. There's either show a warning, and that's what you saw just a moment ago, where I tried to make a change and I have it set to, and you can see over here, I can edit B4 through F6, but I want it to pop up a warning. So I can make changes, but it's going to fuss every time I do and let me know that maybe I shouldn't be making changes to that area. Now you can also say, I only want certain people to be able to make changes. And that's going to be on top of the sharing permissions that you've already set. So somebody may be an editor, but may not have access to change certain areas within the spreadsheet. So you can get very granular if you need to. And then as you move, it will update. If you keep that window open and move from tab to tab, it will show the protections for whatever sheet you're looking at. And now that I've protected this entire sheet, it has the lock icon here to let you know. And all right. Another really cool feature of Sheets, and I've used it from time to time, especially with a document that, again, is going to have a very long lifespan, but it may not get edited very often. It's going to be edited periodically, and that's going to be the notification rules. So you can set this up, and anybody that has access to the document, I believe, I have not tested this. I know you don't have to own the document to get notifications, though. You can have, anytime changes are made, and then you can say at the end of the day or right away, as soon as somebody makes a change, I want you to send me an email to let me know that a change has been made, and it will show where or what the change was. I use this a lot if I have a shared document with another department, and if they're going to be updating something and it's going to take me performing some action after they edit that document. So I set a notification rule to let me know, hey, they've just added new data. I need to go do whatever it is I need to do. It's very useful for if you have, especially cross-departmental sharing. And that was just up here in Tools, Notification Rules. The other one here, and I didn't touch on it at all, and I'm actually going to get into that right now, is a user submits a form. And I've started, as you can see here, I've got form responses, and this is what I was playing around with the other day. I'm going to go into my test sheet and start from fresh. So if we go into Tools and choose Create a Form, and you can create a form from a spreadsheet, or you can create a form from out here, and it will create the spreadsheet for you. Either way, those two will end up going hand in hand. Anytime you create a form, there will be an accompanying spreadsheet with it, so that you can have those responses out there. To set up your form, again, you can just come up here, put in all your information. If you don't want this to be multiple choice, you can choose from the drop down here and select what type of question this is. Maybe you want checkboxes instead of drop down, or instead of the multiple choice, or you want file upload, or whatever the case is. It will let you choose what kind of question this is. And then you can come in here and add additional options. I'm going to add another question just so I have more than one. And I'll add a third one. All right. And then from here, and again, this is if you need to create a really quick test form that you want to send out to people. Maybe it's a short term, you just need some answers and don't want to go create either a SurveyMonkey or one of those other accounts. You can come in here and create a test form. And I know a lot of departments have used this feature before. And then you can send it either email or copy the link and maybe IM it to them. Thank you, Amanda. And then it will create, as you can see, it created another sheet here with question Q1, Q2, Q3, and it will put the answers anytime anyone fills this out, and it will add them to that spreadsheet. So if you're using the notification rules, you can say anytime somebody submits a form, I want you to email me. Now, if it's a form that you're going to be getting a lot of, you may not want the right away, you may want the daily digest. So it will send you a summary of what happened that day. And advanced settings. So, and this is the last thing I've got in here. So collect email addresses. You may want, as you saw here, it's got timestamp and the questions, and that's all it collects. If you turn this on, it's going to, and I may need to, oh, there it went. So it's going to add another column for the email address as well. And there's a lot of different require sign-in, so you may want to restrict it to CCCC EDU. Limit it to one response, otherwise they can respond as many times as they want. I'm not going to go through all of the settings here. They're fairly self-explanatory, but you can customize how you want your form to work. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail with forms. I just wanted to touch on it since it was a more or less subset of the Google Sheets. All right, and that's all I had prepared, so I apparently timed it fairly well. Are there any final questions? We've got a couple minutes remaining. All right, hopefully you've learned something new. Are there other resources that we can use? So what do you mean by other resources? Oh, there are some videos, and I have not gone into them in a while. I will have to find them, and I can send those out. All right, Samantha Carroll. I will make a note. Yeah, they do have some documentation. Google has some documentation out there, and it's been a long time since I've looked for it, but they do have quite a bit out there, and I'm pretty sure they've got videos and walkthroughs, but I'll find those and let you know. So I appreciate everyone's time. If you do think of any other questions, just give us a shout, and we'll figure it out if we don't know it.